Carlos, I wanted to talk today a little bit about the custom work you do here, or the
Sure.
bespoke projects. Tell me a bit about how they start. Is it just people that figured out they need X-ray and they've got a weird problem and they want to know if you can solve it?
Yeah. I think they stumble upon something they see online and they reach out to us and say, "Can you do this?" And that's essentially how it starts.
So give me a couple of examples of stuff that's come through the door. What kind of problems do you see? Maybe there's no pattern. Maybe it's just random.
Yeah, there's no pattern at all. The armor. There's a lot of stuff online. We kind of become industry leaders in that, and that started as a custom system. A lot of medical devices. We done for investigation, like human skulls and bones, and for like bullet fragments, things like that. So it's very interesting, right? No single day is the same.
Yeah. So when we dig into the armor, for example, how did that first start? What did they come to you? What problem were they hoping that you'd be able to solve in terms of the manufacturing of that armor?
So I think the technology was at a standstill. They were using X-ray technology that was slow and complicated, and somebody kind of found us saying like there has to be something better, right? Something more digital, faster, and that's where our first conveyor system for armor came about. A lot quicker, a lot easier on operators, on data management, and things need to be connected now. So we brought that to that industry that didn't exist.
Okay, so having bought the inspection, were you able to influence the manufacturing process or the design process? Were you able to make the product better as well as saying it's a go, no go?
Yeah. I think the big market for armor is government, right? So there was it's like a bottleneck, right, of inspection, right? You can't inspect plates fast enough to fulfill these giant contracts that you get for the government. You're talking about $500 million contracts. So having a system that's fast, that you can optimize your whole production line, that allows manufacturers to go out for more contracts. So there's no bottleneck in your production line anymore.
Yeah. So you're actually improving their opportunities, and you're driving more business. Medical devices, I think, is really interesting, and you've got a couple of examples going through the facility at the moment. Tell me a bit about those and how they came about.
Yeah, the only difficult part about the medical devices is there's already a use for X-ray in the medical field, so people think they know it. So a lot of these companies already use X-ray, but more of a kind of failure analysis tool, not in a production high throughput environment. So some of these companies coming in and bringing issues, and us allowing or giving them solutions has been great. A lot of these devices are meant to be X-rayed, but in a different context, right? They're meant to be X-rayed in an operating room.
Yeah.
So they have thick metals or gold or tungsten that once we put it into our systems, it was a perfect match, right? Our vision tools work great because they're meant to be X-rayed. They were designed to be X-rayed, not from a quality standpoint, but to track them inside your body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think what I found really interesting when we were doing the factory tour, as well as seeing the products that were going out, and they were really interesting because they have quite a lot of interesting automation around the X-ray, but it was the way the process is driven internally, where they're sending you a product, you're evaluating that product, trying to identify how you get the best image, what you can see, what you can't see, and that's kind of the first gate. Talk me through that process. If I bring something in and say, hey, we're getting 4% failures on these, we don't know why. Yeah. How do you respond to that, and how do you kick that project off?
So the way I see it, I see that as like the confidence building stage, right? We have to show the customer, we have to give them confidence that we can provide a solution, but it's also works the other way around. Can we actually build a system, can we actually do it? And most of the times we find ways of figuring out, right? We have these stretch goals to say, oh, maybe the customer wants something done too fast. Yeah. And it's like, is there technologies out there that we can do? But we go through this process, feasibility studies, like a gauge R&R, take pictures, CAD simulations, and see if that project can be done. And it's worked so far.
Yeah, and I guess for a lot of customers, it's the first time they've seen an X-ray of their product,
Yeah.
and they're learning a lot from that in the terms of, they might have a problem with one thing, but there might be an issue with alignment or another thing. That's kind of an exciting eureka moment for you and for them.
Yeah, and it's turned into more like internal growth within our own customers, right? Somebody's, they need a machine to measure A, right? But another engineer is kind of interested in measuring B, right? Like a different part. So that's where a lot of the growth within accounts comes in too.
Yeah.
They haven't seen an X-ray image and they get excited, and maybe another, these are big companies, right? So most of them already have X-ray, but not all of them know that it exists within their own company.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily know how to apply it to their specific problem.
Yep.
I think what's really interesting when you talk about stretch internally is when you do get something in, the way the engineering teams work together to say, hey, can we try this? Can we do this? Is there a different solution? Should we turn that around and do it a different way?
Yeah.
That must be a lot of fun for you when you've brought the product through the door to kind of go through that process.
Yeah, it is, and it became more of our kind of our thought process.
Yeah.
Let's design things with the flexibility to be, make them better down the line, right? Yeah. Even our software that we use for automated systems is very modular. So, if you want to run it this way, it can run this way. If you want to swap it to run a conveyor, you can do that, right? If the next year they need a faster conveyor, we can plug that in, right? So it became, we're a company kind of run by engineers, right? So you can't avoid thinking like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a good process for us.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely an important part of the DNA. Last thing, when you do get past that gate, you do realize you can do it. You do figure out how you can do it. It's really important to push something out of the door that you're as proud of as you are the rest of your machine. So it's got to go through all those quality processes, through all those gates before it gets released to the customer, or before you bring the customer in to see it.
Yeah.
Is that because it finds its way into the normal production system, or is that because you have to shepherd it through and take care of it all the way through that process, or a bit of both?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, but I think that there's a culture that we have here that we have to be proud of our product, right? We're solving people's issues, but we also have to, if I go down and visit a customer and I see our machine, I want to say, we built that, right?
Yeah.
And we're getting that. We're, most of our customers are repeat customers.
Yeah.
Even when, the market's down, we're still getting business from repeat customers, right? And I think the best part of the process is getting that feedback from our customer. Hey, that machine, we purchased last year, we need a second and a third one.
Yeah.
And you have to have the quality, the service, and the engineering, to back that up.
Yeah, it's the field team as well, isn't it? It's the service team once it's been delivered. And I guess when you look at those repeat customers, some of them are coming back for another machine or multiple machines, but others are coming back and saying, hey, you solved this problem. Yeah. Can you take a look at this for us? It's different, but we think you may be able to do it.
Yeah, we get that all the time. They're visiting a customer in California, but their own internal visit, right? But their factory is in New York, and say, oh, I like what they're doing over there. Can you do that over here?
Yeah.
But maybe different.
Yeah.
But maybe change it. Maybe do this.
We got a slightly different product,
different,
slightly
right?
different requirement.
So yeah, that happens, and internal growth within our accounts and referrals has been huge, right?
Yeah,
They kind of companies talk to each other.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen if the product's not great.
Exactly.
Carlos, thanks so much for your time. Pleasure to chat, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.